Welcome to another episode of Off the Rack. I'm Walt Rakowich, and I'm grateful to have you here as we explore what it means to practice transformative leadership. Dr. David Fajgenbaum is a physician scientist, best known for his pioneering work in drug repurposing for rare diseases. He's a co-founder and executive director of EveryCure, an organization that aims to harness the power of AI to find treatments for rare diseases by repurposing existing drugs. As a survivor of Castleman disease, Dr. Fajgenbaum has experienced firsthand the challenges of battling a rare, life-threatening illness while also leading transformative research. He's the author of the memoir Chasing My Cure, where he shares his personal journey of facing his illness, conducting research, and then finding hope. Dr. Fajgenbaum is also an associate professor at the University of Pennsylvania, where he continues his research on rare diseases and the role of the immune system in these conditions. Beyond his scientific contributions, Dr. Fajgenbaum's story is one of perseverance, leadership, and an unwavering commitment to improving the lives of others, making him a true champion of the rare disease community. So please tune in for a conversation with Dr. David Fajgenbaum when he joins Off the Rack to share insights on being a pioneer in medicine, hope, and purpose. Personal question before we launch into you. I know you live near Philadelphia, and your Eagles won a championship as far as I remember last year. Are you an NFL fan, one? And if so, any predictions on this year's Super Bowl?
So yes, I'm an NFL fan. Yes, I'm an Eagles fan. And of course, go Birds. Super Bowl for the Eagles, back to back.
Well, just so you know, I'm a Penn State guy. So, right. Although I'm from the other side of the state in Pittsburgh, I'm sort of more of a Steelers guy, but I have to admit that was one heck of a Super Bowl last year. I mean, that was amazing.
It was. And of course, I know Penn State hasn't been having the year this year that you guys were hoping for. And sort of, it's been more like my boys. I played football at Georgetown, which we're not known for our football, but we typically end up, somewhere around 500 every year. So I think you're sort of experiencing what it's like to be a Georgetown, a former Georgetown player and fan.
I can only tell you it's not easy.
It's not easy. It's not easy.
This year's been tough.
It's not easy.
Hey, David, your story is really extraordinary. I mean, from medical student to patient to researcher, how did that transformation shape not just your approach to medicine, but how you lead and how you inspire others in your field?
Yeah, I mean, it really changed everything. To go from being this healthy medical student, I had promised my mom that I would become a doctor in her memory when she died from cancer when I was 19, to then becoming critically ill myself. I was a third-year med student, and out of nowhere, I became critically ill with this horrible disease, Castleman's, and nearly died 5 times from that disease, eventually discovered a drug that saved my life. And so that journey from becoming, the loved one of a patient with cancer to becoming a medical student, to becoming a patient myself, and then becoming a researcher to try to discover a drug for me. And now more recently an advocate and a leader. All of those experiences have had such a profound impact on me. I think that, one thing that's really tangible that I maybe will go to is my experience in the intensive care unit. I spent about 6 months in the ICU back when I was 25 years old. And there were 3 things that helped me to get through it that I think are important lessons for anyone, no matter what you're going through, challenges, good times, bad times. And the first was that I always had a vision for what I was fighting for. While I was in the ICU, I literally could picture my girlfriend at the time then being my wife. I could imagine us having kids. I could imagine a family. I could imagine doing research and discovering treatments and taking care of patients. But having that clear vision for the future, it helps you to fight through tough times. It also helps you to keep going during easy times. You just, staying relentlessly focused on that vision that you're working towards. The second thing is that I always had my family by my side. So my girlfriend, Caitlin, my sisters, my dad, they were with me relentlessly. They never left my side. That sort of, support that I got from them was critical. I needed their strength. I needed them to hold my hand, to give me the strength I needed when I was too weak to keep fighting. And the third thing was really this concept of one step at a time. And so I was in the ICU, so I wasn't taking any steps. I literally wasn't walking, but one breath at a time became something that I thought a lot about. And I remember there was one point where I was ready to give up, and I remember my sister Gina saying, "Just breathe, Dave, just breathe." And I was really sick, but I remember thinking to myself, I can do another one of these. I can do another few of these. Those breaths added up to minutes, to hours, to days. And then I got a bunch of chemotherapy that saved my life, and I kept relapsing. But if I hadn't kept breathing and kept fighting during those early times, I never would have survived to get the treatments I did. So I think those three things: a vision for the future, an amazing team by your side, and taking things one step at a time. I've found that that's a formula for life. It's a formula for everything you do in life. Everything you do, you should be thinking about, what is that you're fighting for? What are you working towards? Everything in life, you need a great team around you, and everything in life, you get there one step at a time.
Yeah. If you think too far in the future, that's not always a great thing, is it?
That's true. It's, you can't say, gosh, am I going to be able to survive 6 months in the ICU? Of
Right.
course not. No one's got the strength but if you say, okay, I can do it one breath at a time, as long as you have the vision for what you're working towards, it's not necessarily the milestone, but it's like, this is what I'm fighting for. But then take it one step at a time.
Yep. Your memoir, Chasing My Cure, which is really good. It's deeply personal. What was it that surprised you most about, like, when you open your story up to the world, right? And what did that experience kind of teach you about? And I'm going to use the word vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because I kind of believe that the best leaders are willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And they learned from that. But what surprised you the most about you opening that story up to the world?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you mentioned you're leaning into vulnerability because when I was first writing the book, I worked on it just on weekends because I didn't want to get in the way of the work that I do in my lab, and so I worked on it every Saturday, every Sunday for 10 hours each day. And I remember when I would send in my early drafts to the publisher. My amazing editor kept coming back and say, "Well, David, but how did you feel? I know this is what happened. This is what was happening to your kidneys. I know this is what was happening to your body, but how did you feel? What were you thinking about?" And I know that you went through some tough times with your girlfriend, Caitlin. You eventually got married. You have kids. How are you feeling? And so I ended up being a lot more vulnerable because I was really pushed to be vulnerable.
Mm.
And I'm so happy that I was, because it's easy when I do podcasts like this to share about, I was dying and then I discovered a drug. It saved my life. Now we're saving more lives. To only hear, and at least for me, to only share sort of the positive pieces. But in the book, where you actually have, a couple hundred pages where you can really share, the depths of the pain and the depths of the lessons. I think you can, just obviously uncover so much more. And I think readers take so much more from when reading the book than they do from just listening to a podcast, because I was able to get into so much depth. And to your point, because I was able to be so vulnerable.
Yeah. I can't agree with you more. I found that, at least for me, I went through a really tough experience at work. And I think the vulnerability actually made me stronger.
Yep.
Whenever I finally fessed up and, and realized that I wasn't going to cure everything myself, or I wasn't going to do everything myself. And, your experience is very much that way. So you put this organization together, Every Cure, and that organization, in my view, is sort of rewriting the rules of medical discovery. I mean, some of the things you're doing are just unbelievable. And for listeners who aren't scientists, if you were to tell them, how would you describe what makes drug repurposing and then your use of AI so different than traditional research?
Sure. So drug repurposing is this idea that the drugs we already have can be used to treat more diseases and more patients right now. So, the drugs that are available and widely, prescribed at your local CVS, actually have many other uses. Like the drug that saved my life was made for organ transplantation. It had never been used before for Castleman disease. And we know that there are many more opportunities out there. Doctors are trying drugs in different ways, sort of in a very random way. Drug companies consider multiple diseases for a given drug, but they aren't able to pursue the vast majority of them because they have to pick the few that they focus on. So there's all this untapped potential out there. And what's so crazy is that it's very inexpensive to find a new use for a medicine that already exists. It costs about 1% of what it costs to develop a new drug, to take an old drug and find a new use for it. So you'd say, oh my gosh, 1%, we must be doing a lot of that. It's so inexpensive. The drugs are already here. They're available. They can help people tomorrow. Literally, doctors can prescribe drugs for any use where they think the benefit outweighs the risk, as long as it's FDA approved for one thing. So you'd say, oh, there must be tons of drug repurposing, but actually, though it costs 1% as much as making a new drug, there's no financial upside. No one makes any money off of finding a new use for an old drug. If a drug is generic, that means there's multiple manufacturers. Each manufacturer is making pennies per pill. So even finding another use for it with hundreds of thousands of patients won't actually make any manufacturer any money. And so it's this sort of depressing but real concept that the drugs we have can treat more patients today, but the incentives just aren't aligned to find these new uses for old medicines. And no one's hiding them, by the way. Sometimes I share this and people hear when I say this that, oh my gosh, drug companies are hiding cures. It's not that. It's just that they're not pursuing new uses for old medicines if they can't justify spending the cost, because they're not going to make it back in profit. And then the second thing that I think is important is, to your point around AI, is that artificial intelligence enables us to quantify how likely every drug is to be able to treat every disease. And so when you do that, you can then look at the very top of the list to say, what drug for what disease is scoring the highest by AI? What is the match where our artificial intelligence platform thinks that lidocaine may treat breast cancer, or you name what the match might be. So that way us humans can look at the top of the list and determine, oh yeah, that really is interesting. We should do a clinical trial, or we should do further laboratory studies to better understand that and see if we can maybe move it forward to reach patients.
So David, you wear more hats than most. You're a doctor, you're a scientist, you're an advocate, you're a survivor, frankly. I'm kind of curious for our audience, how do you stay centered when you're leading in so many directions? Because a lot of people that listen to this are leaders, or they're moving up in organizations. They're having to manage a lot more people, and they get pulled and tugged in so many different directions. Like you, how do you stay centered when you're leading in so many different directions?
Yeah, for me, it's pretty straightforward, and that's that. Though I have multiple hats and I'm doing different activities, it's all with the same goal: save and improve lives. And full stop. And it's how can we save and improve more lives with the drugs we already have? Because certainly we could get involved in new drug development, but that's going to cost billions of dollars and take decades. But if we just want to save and improve lives as rapidly and as efficiently as possible, then it's going to be using existing medicines in new ways. It's going to be using artificial intelligence to find those new medicines. It's going to be thinking about doing clinical trials in new ways, but it's all in service of saving and improving lives with the drugs we already have.
So your point is, if you stay centered and you stay focused on that as the goal,
yep,
somehow that keeps you centered.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you can
you don't get distracted.
Exactly. It's easy to get distracted. And I think that, get a chance to be a part of, podcasts with folks like you. And I was just on Huberman last week, and there's these opportunities to get distracted, but actually being a part of these is all in service of saving and improving lives. We're raising awareness for our work. We're hopefully going to have folks that'll donate to our work. They'll have to share about our work. Everything that we do, everything I do, is in service of saving and improving lives. And if it doesn't appear that this partnership or that activity is going to help us to do that, then it's easy way to say, all right, well, that's not a good use of time. But saving and improving lives, as long as you can have that thing that sort of keeps you focused, I think that's really important.
Yeah. By the way, David, I do want to ask you at some point, and maybe it could be in the end, if someone wanted to donate to you, where would they do that?
You can go to everycure.org/donate. And so you could donate online. You could get our mailing address to send a check in the mail. We're a nonprofit. We, as I mentioned earlier, we're on this mission to save and improve lives with the drugs we already have. And we go after diseases that are often rare, always devastating, and drugs that are almost always very cheap. And so we don't make any money off of selling any medicines. We don't own any medicines. We just do the work to try to prove drugs work and try to get them to patients. And so as a result, we really rely on individuals who want to see us break the system, which is to say, like, we're not only going to develop drugs for diseases that are profitable. We're not only going to advance drugs that are profitable. We at EveryCure are going to be the entity that just looks for opportunities to help people. In order to do that, obviously, because they're not profitable, we have to have partners that support us to help patients.
Man, I just love what you guys are doing. I really do. You have said, I've heard you say that patients are partners in progress.
Yep.
What does great collaboration between researchers and patients actually look like to you?
Yeah, great collaboration is where patients are actually part of the decision making process on what studies should we do for a disease. What are the things that we need? Sometimes in medicine, us researchers will get focused on one aspect of a disease or maybe one type of drug, when oftentimes patients want something completely different from what us researchers think we might want. So with some neurological conditions, we hear that physicians and researchers are often focused on the ability to move or to walk, but oftentimes the parents want to be able to speak to their kids, and verbal communication is more important than physical ability to move. They can help to move their child places, but if their child can't speak to them, they can't engage with them in the way that they want. And so that's just one example where if you're not in lockstep with patients and with families, you might go down all these rabbit holes that really aren't actually the thing that the patients and the families really, really want. So I think being a true partner is where patients, physicians, researchers, loved ones are all working together to determine what are the kinds of research studies that should be done, what are the kind of drugs that we need to develop, what are the unmet needs right now, what do we actually care about, so that way we can solve real problems. I think medicine and biosciences can oftentimes get into focusing on what are interesting questions to ask that we have technology to solve, but that's fine. Interesting, innovative technologies, all that stuff's great. But what we really should be doing is, solving the problems that are really meaningful to people. And if you don't actually involve the people who could benefit, then you'll never know what's the really meaningful problems to solve.
Yeah, yeah, that isn't that the truth. Yeah, I could not agree with you more. I remember reading that New York Times article that came out on you. I don't know, 6 months ago or so,
Yeah.
roughly April, I think it was, and it talked about how these people just out of the blue contacted you from Washington. You didn't even know them, and next thing you know, you solved it, and the person was on his deathbed,
Yep.
and and working with that person to, in
Yep.
essence, solve his problem. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing to me, what can be done when there's collaboration, if you will,
Yep.
between a patient and a researcher, and the lives that can be saved, after that as well. Um, so, David, one of the one of the things that when I look at your life, I think about. I mean, this person learned from adversity, and in business, that's a huge. It can be a huge downside, but it can be a huge upside. I mean, Vince Lombardi, I think, one time said, "Adversity is our best teacher in life," and I
Yes.
do.
Yes.
I believe him. You've built and you've led teams through extraordinary challenges. Um, is there a moment of adversity that stands out to you as kind of a true test of leadership?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it wasn't quite a moment, but once we decided to start Every Cure 3 years ago, we knew that it needed to exist. There has to be an entity in our medical system that's just looking for the low hanging fruit to help people, things that aren't profitable but can help a lot of people. Like that, there's got to be an entity to do that. We knew it had to be created. We wanted to take on this challenge. We knew it wouldn't be easy, but someone had to do it, and so we were leaning in to do it. But fundraising was really tough our first year, Walt. I
Mm.
mean, we really struggled to get people behind it because everyone we spoke to said, "I love what you're doing. We want you to work on this disease. We find a treatment for this disease." And we would step back and say, well, the power of Every Cure is that we aren't going to focus on a specific disease or a specific drug. We're just going to look for the best opportunities to help people, period. What drugs for what diseases can help people. And by taking that sort of all versus all low hanging fruit approach, we're going to help more people than if, we focus on one disease, or one drug, which is what companies and individuals were asking us to do. And so I think the leadership moment was really just sticking to our principles that, though we could have raised significant money in that first year from individuals and companies to focus on things that would have solved their needs, we stayed true to our mission, which is let's continue to look for partners, for funding partners that want to see us fix the system and not necessarily one disease or one drug. And I'm really happy we did that. Here we are 3 years later, and we have a portfolio of 9 different repurposed treatments for 9 diseases that are horrible conditions, all of which, we would have never known that there might be a match for that particular disease if we started out by going one disease at a time. But because we took this umbrella approach, all versus all, we are able to find them. And so I'm happy we stuck to it. And I think that gets to that sort of, the first point I made around, you got to have a vision for what you're fighting for, and you got to stick to that vision. I think the quote from Jeff Bezos is sort of like, and I might get it wrong, but it's like, stay strict on your vision and loose on your strategy to get there. Like
Yeah,
there's things you might be able to do differently. You got to adapt, to your point. You got to learn from adversity, but that vision that you're working towards, you got to stay strict on that. And if it's finding low hanging fruit to save as many lives as possible, you got to stick to that, and you got to figure out the right strategy to get there.
I love that. I love that. Absolutely. Gets back to starts with a vision, but then you had your family by your side, and then one step at a time, because
That's right.
that one step at a time might need to change. You might have to go pivot
That's
this
right.
way or that way, whatever it might be, but keep the vision
Right.
and one step at a time. I love that.
That's right.
Um, David, if you looked out 10 years or 15 years from now, what gives you the most hope? Like, is there a breakthrough that you dream of seeing realized?
Yeah. I mean, looking, that far out, I mean, I hope by then that dozens of diseases will be treated with drugs that we've advanced forward. And as I mentioned, I hope that they're going to be across a wide range of conditions. If I had to put one disease on that list, or maybe two diseases that I would love to see us really transform, one of them's glioblastoma, brain cancer. My mom died from glioblastoma 21 years ago, and as I mentioned earlier, we don't pick diseases to go after. We look for the best opportunities out there. But I sure hope that we're going to come across a glioblastoma treatment at some point that would mean the world. Then another disease that I really hope will make progress against is ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. I actually lost my brother-in-law to ALS 5 years ago. And again, that's another one of these horrible, uniformly fatal, terribly progressive conditions that I would love for us to be able to find a treatment for.
I tell you what, that is both of those would be unbelievable if we could solve those.
Yep.
They really would. And well, I'm just amazed at what you're doing. I mean, what you're doing is just phenomenal. And Bob McDonald is our mutual friend, and
That's
Bob
right.
is one of the best guys. I think he's on your board, isn't he?
He is. He's on our board of directors, and Bob is. I've never met anyone as values driven and as just incredible as Bob. He's as he was CEO of Procter and Gamble. He was
Yeah.
secretary of the VA, and he just brings such rigor to everything that he does. And like I said, it's always values driven. It's what are the values? How do we make sure that the things we do get us closer to the values that we hold closest to our heart?
Yeah. And that's what I love about Bob. Bob was on this show about a year ago, and he and I are in a forum together, we're in a national forum together, the CEO forum. And he is just, he's really one of the neatest guys I've ever met in my life. So
I agree.
you're
So
doing great.
humble and so brilliant. He's got it all.
You're doing great having him on your board. David, one other question. I'm asking all my guests this year about purpose. And other than the obvious mission of every cure, which maybe that is the number one purpose, I don't know, but is there a single purpose you're most passionate about pursuing?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So every cure is obviously the thing that I think about all day long, and that's to make sure that no one suffers if there's a drug that could help them. No one should suffer today if there's a drug that's already sitting at the CVS that could help them today. That just was made for another disease.
Right.
That's sort of what I think about constantly. For me as a person, I also spend a lot of time thinking about being the best father and husband I can possibly be. I have two amazing kids that are 7 and 4 years old. That while I never could have dreamed that I would be able to, be here all these years later, it's 15 years from when I first got sick, and to have these two amazing kids and this amazing wife. And I think that I get so focused on the work that we do with every cure and the work that I do here in the lab at University of Pennsylvania that that sometimes I can, sometimes lose track of just how important that other purpose is that I have, which is, to be the best father and husband I can possibly be.
Back to that question that I asked you about being centered, for me, my family, my friends, and my faith, and kind of kept me centered. They really helped divert my attention when I most needed it, and all those sorts of things. And I think I'm hearing something a little bit the same from you.
For sure. There's nothing like coming home to a couple kids that are giving you the biggest hugs in the world after a tough day. And again, when I spend time with my kids and with my wife, I think a lot about the kids out there, the parents out there who either have or will develop a disease. And if we can develop a drug, find a drug for them, they get to experience the things that I'm experiencing. And so it's very much a circuit and a self-fulfilling sort of cycle where it's the more time I spend with my family, the more I just feel so fortunate to experience the love that I do. And then it's okay. We got to do this for more people. We got to save lives so they can experience this more and more.
Oh man, that's so powerful. Couldn't agree with you more. David, I just want to thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Off the Rack. I'm really grateful to you, and you are an incredible leader, and you have an incredible heart. And man, you could change the world. You really could change the world. And so I wish you all the best in that. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on today. It's been awesome having you on.
Well, I so appreciate you saying those nice things. I do believe we can change the world because I've got an amazing team of people like Bob and others that are part of this mission. Together, we definitely can change the world. We're doing everything we can. And as I shared before, it's, can we change the world one patient at a time with a drug that's already out there, that's sitting at the pharmacy that can help them. And we're going to keep pushing with everything we've got. And I really appreciate you helping to get the word out about our work at Every Cure.
No, it's my honor to do it. And who knows, maybe there's someone that is watching this that it'll save their lives or their life, a life of a loved one.
Right.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Absolutely.
Well, and I'd like to just say thanks to all of you who tuned in. First of all, you can always find more insights from our episodes in the Off the Rack Plus newsletter, and follow Off the Rack on your favorite podcast platform. Leave a review, share this episode with someone who needs a little purpose-filled inspiration and the like. And until next time, I just encourage all of you to be human with one another and find a way to have a positive influence on someone around you each and every day.